Chicago was plunging into the darkness of the night, turning into a maze of shadows and unconscious threats. Jack Rivers took on another night shift, not even suspecting that this night would be the turning point of his life. 47 years old, divorced, with thinning hair and tired eyes, he was the living embodiment of a city taxi driver who had seen many stories, but had never been the protagonist of a truly dangerous adventure. His 2008 Ford Crown Victoria looked more like a relic of the automotive industry than a modern vehicle. The cracks on the windshield, the worn seat upholstery, the smell of old coffee and engine oil, all this was his second home. After a painful divorce from Helen 3 years ago, the taxi company became the only place where Jack felt a semblance of stability. Jack didn't like to reminisce about the past. He served in the Marines, spent 2 years in hot spots, and had a trauma he could never fully overcome. Then there was the divorce, the loss of contact with his daughter Sarah, who now rarely answered his calls. Working as a taxi driver has become a kind of therapy. Constant movement, new faces, short stories of strangers. That evening, everything started as usual. Night shift duty is a special challenge for the driver. Rare passengers, the dark streets of Chicago, quiet jazz on the radio, and the constant expectation of something extraordinary. Jack has long learned to read people by the smallest details. Habits, gestures, looks. The passenger appeared unexpectedly. Around midnight, at the intersection of Michigan Avenue and Wacker Drive, a tall man in his 40s, dressed in an expensive navy Brioni suit with an immaculately pressed shirt and highly polished Oxfords. His appearance was in stark contrast to Jack's usual overnight passengers. The man got into the back seat, taking a quick glance around. His hands, which he carefully hid in the pockets of his expensive coat, were barely noticeable scratches. There was a fresh bruise on his left wrist, a clear sign of a recent fight or intense confrontation. The first minutes of the trip passed in tense silence. The passenger kept checking his phone, nervously erasing messages, periodically looking back. His every move was like that of a hunted animal, ready to take flight at any moment. Jack's professional intuition, trained by years of service and work as a taxi driver, reacted instantly. Something was wrong with this passenger. Too tense a pose, too many glances in the rearview mirror, too obvious anxiety. Suddenly, headlights appeared in the mirror. 3 black Jeeps with tinted windows moving extremely synchronously began to approach quickly. Their maneuvers were so professional that it became clear that this was not a random pursuit, but a well-planned operation. The passenger was instantly transformed. He went from being an intense businessman to an extremely focused operative. He took out a strange electronic device, quickly typed in some code, then pressed the invisible secure communication button several times. Jack intuitively sensed the danger. His driving skills, honed by years of service and work as a taxi driver, turned on automatically. Sharp turns, use of service passageways, maneuvering between rare night cars. The Jeeps were not far behind. Moreover, they were clearly ready to do anything to catch up with the passenger. One of them tried to ram the taxi, but Jack masterfully dodged, using the narrow passage between parked cars. At some point, the passenger dropped the flash drive. Jack managed to notice a strange inscription, an encrypted code, obviously not American. It was becoming more and more obvious that this passenger had brought with him a whole tangle of international intrigues. The years of service in the Marines were not in vain. Jack remembered the preparation, remembered the extreme situations, remembered how important it was to keep cool. Every move he made was deliberate, every turn calculated. The chase lasted almost an hour. Chicago, a huge metropolis with an insane number of roads and passageways, has become an ideal testing ground for this confrontation. Jack used every opportunity in the city's infrastructure: underground parking lots, narrow alleys, and detours. The passenger periodically took out some documents, quickly scanned something, then hid it back. He had a tattoo on his neck, a strange symbol that looked like a geometric shape with hieroglyphic elements. It was becoming more and more obvious that Jack was not just a random traveling companion. The climax came unexpectedly. One of the jeeps tried to finally pin the taxi to the curb. Jack used the last professional trick, making a sharp turn and driving through the construction site, which would have been impossible in a normal situation. The adrenaline was pumping. Jack's hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly. His eyes were extremely focused. His Ford felt every extreme movement like a living organism. The machine also seemed to understand the seriousness of what was happening. When the chase was over, the passenger handed Jack an envelope. The amount that was inside could completely change his life. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Two people caught in the middle of an international intrigue. In the morning, a short message about the prevented special operation flashed on the news. No one mentioned the taxi driver who became the unwitting hero of one of the most dangerous nights of his life. Chicago continued its measured life. Only the smell of burnt rubber and adrenaline reminded of what had happened. And in the envelope that the passenger handed out, there was a note. "Thank you for your life. Be careful next time." Jack knew that this night had changed everything. His quiet taxi driving life will never be the same again.